The U.S. stock market is highly concentrated. Should you worry? The financial press writes a lot of scary headlines, but it is real. It is historically unusual, but it's not time to panic. Hi, I'm Scott Hamilton, certified financial planner. We're fee-only and fiduciaries. We have offices in Austin and Houston, and we help people plan for retirement. So first off, let's define what we're talking about. So the S&P 500, that's simply the largest 500 stocks in the U.S., the S&P 500. If you look at the top 10% of these, the returns that came from that index was 41.2% last year. Now, top 20 is 49%. So the bulk of the earnings and the revenues are coming from these top companies. So the Magnificent Seven, which is Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Netflix, Nvidia, Facebook, and Tesla. That's 33.8%, the Mag 7. So it's a large part. So from a historical perspective, historically, the higher the concentration, you have a lower, weaker forecast for the future returns. The recent rallies in the past, maybe there's one that was 28 sessions long. Of those, the top 10%, 10 stocks returned 69% of that return. The other 490 stocks just kind of went along for the return. So when you say the market, it's really just a handful of stocks nowadays. So what changed? So in the early 2010s, it was largely, these firms were very diversified. You know, they were Apple, Exxon, Johnson & Johnson. And then today, there's a common theme, and it's AI across the Mag 7, most of the other top 20 stocks. Very highly correlated there. But there's earnings that back this up. The top 10% of the S&P 500 generates a third of the revenue, the earnings. Third of the earnings from the top 20 stocks, 2 times the revenue growth than the balance of the S&P 500. So these are high growth, highly profitable firms, and it's true that there is a lot of concentration, and it is a concern to be aware of, but it's not time to panic. So what can you do? Well, you should have a financial plan. You should understand and then run it through a stress test to know how your market, your holdings would behave. And then understand what you own. So if you have multiple large cap growth funds or individual holdings or different ETFs, you might unexpectedly be holding more of these Mag 7 or the top 10 or top 20 stocks than you anticipate. You need to have an understanding of how concentrated your personal portfolio is. And because of this effect that we have with these large growth firms, the Mag 7 traditionally, that are earning such a large mind share that you run a risk of overlap. So be aware of that. Visit Hamilton Financial Planning's website and schedule a Get Acquainted meeting, and we can do a stress test and a market concentration review of your portfolio. But schedule a Get Acquainted meeting, and I'd like to talk with you. Thank you.